Why, hello there. It's been a while since we've had a little chance to talk, huh? But no, before we start the podcast, I want to touch base on a couple things. Last time I was kind of using a headset to record, and it seemed like there was a lot of friction between the headset and the microphone cord, so there's a lot of weird kind of rubbing. So for those curious, no, I wasn't wearing leather pants. I just watched that episode of Friends the other day. So anyways, that's topic number one. Topic number two is I wanted to talk about, the elephant in the room for most of you at this point that follow that podcast. How's those New Year's resolutions going? We're a few months in now. I round up to things. So I say we're about 4 months into the year. So where are you? Let's be honest. Right? Let's figure out where we are. Where are we with your goals? Have you looked at your list lately? Have you assessed where you are with each of your goals? Have you been objective with yourself as to whether or not you're hitting your metrics or reaching certain goals at certain times? That way, by the end of the year, you've reached the goal, right? Like, where are we with them? That's what I would say to everyone, is just touch base with your goals if you haven't. If you've been working diligently on them and you've been focused and eagle-eyed on the goal, then good for you. Mad applaud. And that's not sarcasm. That's applause, legitimately. And if you haven't, no big deal. Things happen. Life happens. We all have things that show up on our plates and things happen. But if you can still achieve those goals and if you can get back on track, I think it's something worth reevaluating, right? Remember who you were 3 months ago and how motivated and fiery you were about getting these things done. I think it's a good time to reassess again, especially if you're completely forgotten about your goals. I think it's time to reassess and look at them again and start grinding, right? This is your little reminder. So with all that said, by the way, when I say these things, I'm not shaming you guys. I'm just basically reminding you to do what some people forget to do. And I understand that life gets complicated and things happen. I totally get that. But at some point, you might want to, reassess if you're looking to actually complete these goals. That's it. Just wanted to touch base on that. And now time for our regularly scheduled podcast. So I've got an interesting scenario. Maybe we can go through this together and we can kind of discuss a little bit as to whether or not you agree with me, right? I'm going to ask that this is one of those where you're going to have to hold my hand and kind of go with me into the darkness here and see if we make our way out to the other side, right? So I was thinking about this earlier, and my mind often goes to both dark thoughts and extreme thoughts at times. So with that said, this is going to be one of those. So welcome to the podcast this week. I was thinking about what happens if you have a child and you're just a bitter, just shitty person, right? Go with me here. Put yourself in that position. And with that said, you're just in an embittered phase in your life and you're just not happy and you're disappointed with your own life and, situations and the cards you were dealt. Insert any sort of those scenarios that we all can visualize, right? We all can visualize those things. Insert any of those and then start thinking about what that kid is going to feel like if the parent is telling them constantly, like, you're trash. You're trash and you're never going to achieve anything. Look where I am. Look what I'm doing. You're never going to get past this. This is what you are stuck in. And as dark as that sounds, right, especially for those of you that are parents and have children and you understand the amount of impression that a parent has on their child, right? And it's even darker because knowing human nature, that's likely something that's happened. In fact, that's likely something that's happening now, somewhere, right? And so that child hears that, right? And maybe that child has an even worse experience where they go to school and their teachers see that they're not a great achiever, and maybe the teacher's going through whatever they're going through, or maybe they're just a piece of crap and they also tell the kid that they're terrible and they don't achieve well. They're not going to do well. They're just not smart enough. And then, what if that kid keeps getting that from all his friends at school too, or something along those lines, right? I think at some point, most kids, especially because they're kids, would default to a mindset where they just believe it. They feel like that's their lot in life, and that's what they have to deal with, and that's what they have, and that's all they're ever going to be, and that's all they ever attempt to go for, right? Some of the things that you achieve in life, are only there because somebody propelled you, motivated you, inspired you to get to that level. Some of those come from that. And so if you don't have those situations, how is that kid going to get past whatever he set his limitations, he or she set their limitations at, right? That's a dark thing to say. And it's a dark thing to probably visualize, especially for those of you that are parents. We're essentially talking about external factors, right? External nature factors, right? Nature and nurture, we're talking about nature. And in that scenario, that child is likely hearing that often and all the time. And that is very likely, once again, it depends on who you are, what you are, a lot of things, genetics, but more than likely having that from your role models and from your teachers and from your peers is going to likely set your value of yourself very low, as well as the amount of success you can achieve, as well as a lot of things. It's going to just basically break you down systematically over time. And so as we talk about these external factors, again, is a word I'm looking for, but it's really not clicking right now. As much as I want to pretend like somebody could push past that, I just don't think a lot of people do, right? And so I often like to think of people as just grown children, right? If I'm talking to you and you're listening to this podcast and you're an adult, you're just a byproduct of surviving long enough to not die, right? And so there is no magic that happens when the legal or judicial system tells you that you are now an adult. There's no magic that happens that transforms you into a well-defined, well-developed, balanced, good human being. Nothing happens. You literally wake up the next day when you're 18 or 21 or whatever the legal age is as an adult is in your place of residence, right? And nothing happens. You're still the same person. All the ego issues, all of the nature, nurture, everything transfers over to the next day. There's no magic that happens. And so I often find it fascinating how people don't realize how much of what they consume dictates their life. Because, and I've alluded to this and maybe talked about this on another podcast before, but we live in weird, trying times. In my lifetime, this is the most kind of malleable, weird time that we've lived in. People had anxiety about Y2K. People had anxiety about potential market crashes and the housing market taking for lack of a better word, shit a few years ago, right? But now we're a few years into a pandemic. We're a few years into people being stressed out, not knowing the certainty of things, not knowing how crazy this pandemic is. Then now we have a potential war with Russia. We've been at war in many different places as far as being a United States person, resident. you're having wars in different countries, and this is the only time that I feel like in recent history where everybody feels affected. And one of the things that happened during that time was that media gobbled up a lot of power. They gobbled up a tremendous amount of power. And with that, because people were so sucked into trying to figure out what's going on in the world, they then became glued to media, social media, news, whatever. And these people gobbled up a tremendous amount of power to the point where everything, if you notice, is sensationalized. Everything is written in a way where it is taboo, and it is something you want to click on to figure out what that meant, or you see something and invokes some sort of emotion with you. You have to click on it to figure out, I cannot believe this is going on. And then you read the article, and it's incredibly sensationalized. And one day I will talk about my view of the media and how those people have definitely fallen from grace. But that's not the topic of today. What I want to talk about is we live in trying times. We live in weird times. Whether or not you're a person that is incredibly affected by the COVID situation, whether you're a person that's incredibly affected by the Russia-Ukraine situation, and the potential of these new variants that are coming out, right? We have another one. We just passed Omicron. Now we're at the freaking near version, if you know what I'm saying. So ultimately, you're probably thinking like, well, what does this tie to this analogy of this kid that you made us go through, asshole? What I'm trying to say is you're no different than that kid. As much as we want to pretend that as an adult you have your shit together and that you are a whole human that is not affected by anything, and you are solid and you are ready, and you're probably a parent and you're going to get your shit together for your kids, those innate things that either you never worked on, those things that are obvious weaknesses, those things that really fuck with you in the middle of the night when nobody's around and it's just darkness and you're alone with your thoughts, those things are still there. And my point to saying all this is that ultimately the things that affect a child still affect you. You're just maybe not as much aware of it, right? How did you react to the COVID situation? How did you react to the possible Ukraine situation, right? There's no different than the kid that gets told something every single day, and with the level of media power that they have now, how that is definitely affecting you. It's a byproduct of it. Some of you are probably thinking like, no, bro, I don't get affected by that stuff. That stuff doesn't even bother me. It affects you to a certain degree, right? Because maybe it didn't affect you. Maybe. And I have a hard time believing in that, right? Because if you're an adult and you're listening to this, you likely have some sort of responsibilities, some sort of monthly situation you got to pay for, right? And in that situation, during the uncertainty of COVID, it must have affected you to a certain level, for sure, period. And if you have kids, if you have responsibilities of other humans, that's probably added to that scenario. And with that being said, if you have family, it definitely affected somebody in your family. And to think that those situations don't rub off on you, and that energy coming off of that anxiety of those people don't rub off on you, it's hard for me to believe. So my point is saying that these media companies are going to keep doing this. This is a byproduct of the situation. If it isn't this new variant, it's going to be continuous war coverage. If it isn't that, it's what you're going to see in social media of those things, because social media is definitely pushing those things as well, because it gets some clicks, it gets some views, it gets you as a user stuck on that app longer. We are weird little creatures that are definitely visually stimulated. Men probably more than women, I would argue, but everybody's stimulated somehow, whether it's by word, whether it's by something visual, but you're still stimulated in some way, shape, or form. And I don't believe the notion that these last 3 years haven't affected you whatsoever, because marketing has been around for a very long time. And they have figured out how to get into your little monkey brain. It's just a fact, right? Every single one of us can think of one little jingle for something that you've probably never had in your life, but is deeply rooted inside your brain, right? I could sit here and sing to you the Chili's Baby Back Rib song, and I have never had Chili's Baby Back Ribs in my life. I could sit here and give you a slogan for a shoe company I don't even really support because no free ads, right? So why is that? That's strategic. That's planned. That is part of the game plan for these companies, is to get to spend millions and millions of dollars in ad revenue to try to get you to a point where you memorize the logos and memorize what those companies are proving or are selling to you. And this is no different than what the media has done the last few years. So my point to all this is telling you that be very careful of your media consumption and very carefully try to keep an eye on what you're looking at, and everybody has a breaking point. And if you're wasting all your time consuming all the negative things and reaching your breaking point quite faster in the day because you're choosing to consume things that just make you upset, it's not worth it, at least not to me. The baby back ribs or the logo or the Coke slogans. I thought of Coca-Cola when I said that. Will kind of stick into your head, right? So there's not a lot of ways to kind of get around that because everything's billboarded, everything's going to be hitting you. But my point is limit the amount of negativity or maybe things that are just not progressing you forward. It's very easy to get lost in memes and little skits and little funny things online, but it's even easier to get lost in negative thoughts. Things that make you feel a certain way. And that's exactly what they're targeting, making you feel a certain way. And one of the things I did a few years ago was trying to limit my consumption of just what I would just call BS. And the more I've done that, the more I've found happiness in that. Because there's no reason to consume things that make you upset that you have 100% no way of doing anything about. Let me say that again. There's no reason for you to get emotionally distraught and upset and angry or whatever over things that you have no control over and cannot possibly change the outcome of. There's just no way. For you to be incredibly impassionate about what Putin is doing with his military, while sad and an extension of stupidity of humanity of not being able to learn from the past, right? Shout out to Naruto. The ultimate situation there is that all you're going to do is get upset. All you're going to do is get mad. And the most you'll ever do, right? Most of us, how about that? I'll put myself in that camp. The most that most of us will do is start a GoFundMe or go protest and do whatever. And Putin does not give a shit about any of that. So what are you really doing with your time and energy and emotions in that? And to my previous point, how much of that stuff are you bleeding off to the people around you? How much of that are you affecting the people around you with your anxiety and your stress and those things that are affecting other people that they chose not to consume those things or feel those things about that thing? You have to agree to a certain level, we as humans are empathic. There's a reason why you watch movies and you feel something. Some people might be more towards certain emotions than others, right? But you watch a movie to put yourself in that situation, to feel those things, to get inspired, whatever it is. But those are all emotions. And so what you choose to spend your time visualizing and consuming with your eyes and ears does affect you. And my whole point to this is saying, be very careful about what you're consuming, and don't think of yourself superior than that kid that we talked about initially, because that kid is you. Whether or not you believe it, that kid is you. And what you choose to hear from nature does affect you. As much as you think it doesn't, it does. And if it doesn't you, it does the people around you. And now it's up to you to decide how much of that you're going to consume, how much of that you're going to allow to penetrate your life and potentially affect those around you. And that's it. Hope you guys enjoyed this. Hopefully we'll talk soon.